So hi everyone. Today I want to talk about refactoring, how you do it, how you strategically approach it, and how you find things to refactor, and etc. We'll see a few things down below. So the main reason for refactoring is the legacy. It's the legacy code we have. And I met a few developers, a few engineers who thought that work in project looks like this. So you constantly fix things until they work, but then they break with a new version of operating system or whatever. But in fact, every time you create a new code, it becomes a legacy in a while. So just remember this. Whenever you write the most fancy solution, the most recent version of framework you use or whatever, it will become legacy super soon. So you need to strategically approach this and update this on a daily basis. So what it is refactoring? First of all, it is, of course, sounds good. And you like super nice developer if you say that you refactor. But in fact, what it helps you to do is for remove classes and those which adds all functionality, which you no longer need. You can remove things like features of frameworks you don't use in your app anymore. You can migrate technologies. It's just a good thing for you as an engineer to jump to something interesting. Break down huge classes, which is not good at all, but in legacy projects, especially in those which we get from Middle East or whatever. Sorry, don't want to offend anyone, but that often happens. We see a huge project consists of 5 files, and they contain like 10,000 lines each one. And you can, of course, increase the future delivery rate, which is an important thing when you work in agile environments. So, and you can ask how you actually handle this if you have such things as new feature requests from your stakeholders all the time. And of course, you need to fix some bugs, improve stability, and etc. So you just think that it's unmanageable. But that's actually how it's supposed to be. That means that your project is alive. If you still need to introduce features and make improvements, that's actually good for you. And what's the usual outcome of this is that your technical depth is growing. So you promise yourself that you will fix something and you will just create like issue in a GitHub or whatever. You make a hard decision to make things fast rather than good because your stakeholders pushing on you. And you, of course, promise yourself and your teammates that you will get back to something and fix it later on. But what's in reality, one day you just realized, oh my God, I have like a huge list of things I promised myself to do 5 years ago, and I didn't. And that's true for all of us. So a few points to remember. You will never come back to refactor something if you don't have strategy to do this. And there is never such point as all bugs are fixed and all features are implemented. Stakeholders will always come up with something. The new versions of operating system will come over, and etc. So you need a strict plan. And without this, you probably will end up in this situation when everything around you is on fire and you're like, it's totally fine. It's already for a few years like this. So I'm going to handle this. So the problem itself is that we have technical things to do, and we don't actually do them. Don't fix anything. The important thing here also is the delivery rate. Well, there are a few different, I would say, a couple of different types of companies where delivery rates are super different. There are companies with engineering perfection when they just say we don't want to implement anything our stakeholders ask us because we have things to refactor, because we see that something is imperfect. And there are the other sides, right? The people who are just do things. They don't care about approaches. They don't care about newest technologies. They just do, and then they wonder why it works. Basically, none of those are interested in this talk, and most of the projects somewhere in between. So you either closer to something on the one side of a fence or on the other. And before you start, there are a few questions you can ask yourself, and how much time available besides regular development and implementation of feature time you have. The interesting question would be here is how much more you can get if you have not much, if you still have a little. How do you communicate this to stakeholders, those people who make budgeting of your work? How to let them know that this is important, not only for you, but for them as well. And what exactly do you want to refactor? Because it's super immature when people say that this application is already in development for 10 years, so give me 3 months and I will rewrite it from scratch. It's not going to happen. So you need to select and find what you actually going to refactor and how to make it safe, of course. The last two questions are the most interesting here, mostly because first two is super dependent on your particular situation, on your company. But we can try to answer those two. And the first one is how to let stakeholders know that this is important, how to convince them. So you need to talk their language. And basically, their language is money, and they want to understand everything, let's say, in this scope. Bring facts and numbers when you come to when you go to present something or whatever. Draw a diagram, because those people love diagrams for some reason. Calculate how much faster you will be. We will talk about this in a minute. And etc. We will talk about this, yeah. And have a particular plan, so don't just go to them saying, like, I need an extra time besides feature implementation to do some technical things you don't understand, because it's not going to work. Think about drawbacks that your refactoring can bring, because it is probably human nature, but if you think about it, you trust more to people who tell you that not only positive things will be related to something they offer you. For example, if someone offers you something super positive, you should be suspicious about this. If they tell you that there could be drawbacks related to this, this, and that, but this is a risk, and we should probably take it because of positive outcome. So this is just like psychological trick. So stakeholders' language, again, it's money. And it's a delivery speed, which is kind of money, again, because the faster you deliver, the more money they save. But sometimes delivery speed, delivery rate, is even more important than money for them, because you can beat your competitors in some areas. That's interesting thing about calculating in a real currency of what you trying to do, what you try to pitch. I mean, the refactoring you try to pitch. And also interesting is how you're able to explain how expensive it is not to do this refactoring, but stay with the same technology or don't develop as a product, I mean. The first one is something I call cost of delay. You can measure it as a difference in delivery speed for stakeholders. It's going to be super simple for them to understand when you say, like, average feature now takes 3 engineers months to implement, and average engineer, let's say in our company, earns $5,000. That means average feature costs 15,000 of pure engineering. But after your refactoring, you are able to implement new features with a single engineer month. So it's only $5,000. And it is literally $10,000 for every feature saved. It is super clear for people who are out of technology, and they clearly understand that it's going to be beneficial and it's worth to spend some money on this. The other one, which is also maybe interesting for them, is inability to bring features. For example, the famous Instant app or Siri shortcuts. We've got an example in our app recently about Instant app. When we realized that our app is not modular enough to start kicking off with Instant apps. And we needed to support this, but we needed a huge refactoring for this. So we pitched to our stakeholders that this is a new feature, none of our competitors has it, and if we implement it, we will be first on the market, and here's the benefits, and here's the link to Google, what it actually is, how it works, what's our maybe future of the feature. And they decided that it's good enough to spend like a few months of a couple of engineers of a small team to work on this just to make the app modular enough. So that actually works. So calculating cost of delay is a powerful thing. The second question is, what exactly do you want to refactor? It might be tricky when your project is super huge and it's super legacy to pick whatever you're interested in, and maybe different engineers in your team interested in different things. But to pick one, I prefer to come up with something super simple, like 2x2 matrix, and in a horizontal axis, draw how often you touch some functionality, and on a vertical one, how error-prone it is. So you basically just draw super simple, I touch it all the time, pretty much in every feature, and it's super error-prone. I receive my crashes on a daily basis in this functionality. Then there is something I probably want to refactor a little bit later. You can go in either direction, whatever you prefer. And this one is, well, this code may be outdated, the solution may be weird, but it works. And most likely you will never get to this point just because there is always something more important than just all codes which you don't touch and it works. When you refactor, choose an approach wisely. Think about all drawbacks. Remember about boilerplate code you will generate every time you create like, say, new feature or new screen in your app. That's a stone to people who love Viper. Well, I'm not super fan of this. Still, I mean, it works, but it generates a lot of boilerplate. So make sure you understand the impact. Remember about limitations of each approach. They're different. Each approach has some limitations. You just need to find one in which they impact you the least. And remember about a few things like newcomers who will join the company, who will join the project. They should be able to understand it fairly easily. And that would be the ideal case. So onboarding time. Support of the solution. So whenever you engineer something, that should be at least supportable, let's say. External dependencies, that's a big one, especially for big companies who don't really like to depend on someone. If you work on startup or you create an MVP, that's probably not your case. But it might be a serious point. Feature implementation speed, of course, it also depends on approaches you chose. And yeah, it's also different in everyone. Start new code with only with new approach, because I've been in projects where we decided that we are going to go with this approach whatsoever. So we committed on it. We even wrote a small documentation on this, code standards, and etc. And then I see merge requests with an old one, and I simply ask, what's going on? Why is this so? And I just got answer like, well, it is just super simpler to use the old one. It shouldn't ever be an excuse, because if you decided to go with a new approach, just keep on it. Whenever complicated it is, that's your chance to get rid of all things. And be pushy on this, I would say. And don't forget to test your refactoring. Well, basically, don't ever refactor without tests. That's simply insecure. Choose whatever you prefer, unit tests or UI tests, but I think that they mostly work the best when they combined. So they just different kind of testing, black box testing, I mean inside-out testing and outside-in testing. And don't hesitate to cover pretty much everything in your codes. Maybe not covering like super weird errors when Swift library is not loaded or something super weird. But it is totally fine to cover everything. The more tests you have, the least the chance you will fail on something super stupid and unexpected. About don't underestimate in tests. Everyone just thinks, well, tests is obligatory, I know, so I will write them one day. But the implication they have is too big. If you introduce a major issue in production because you didn't write tests for your refactoring, stakeholders may like deny you refactoring in the future, just because it is an additional risk for a business. Break down things which you want to refactor. That's a good one for a few reasons. It helps you to systemize whatever you do. It allows you to see results which you achieve, which is important. We're all human beings. We don't really like to work we don't see the result of. You have items of work, so you can easily work out with your stakeholders, so product owners, whoever, that you can use a few business tasks every sprint, and, for example, single technical one, which you pick yourself from a technical log. So having an item of work is also benefit here. A quick example of which I just made up, but still, it is super legacy project with Objective-C classes, of course. All network requests made in view controllers, and app delegated 4,000 lines. It's basically the normal example of legacy project you may receive. Oh, of course, no unit tests. Yeah, that's super classic. So that's how it looks like. Super simple. Login, sign up, and single view controller with app delegates. And that's what I did. I created a few tasks in GitHub. I will prioritize them using my 2x2 matrix later on. But now what I did is I created them atomic. And that's something that will help me when I will want to prioritize them within a sprint, which will have to have business tickets as well, not only technical tickets. So I just put my things in my diagram. Login view controller is a total mess. I often touch it for some reason, maybe business reasons. And it is super error prone. So I want to refactor it first. The worst thing about it is that it makes all requests right from view controller's code. So I want to create a networking layer. Of course, I want to cover this all over with unit tests. And then that's basically the prioritization of my issues from previous slides. It's super quick, super easy, and that's the way to go. I have a quick question. If you can see what is super wrong with this code. It is easy 3D touch action shortcut. It looks okay, I think. What is the most disturbing part? Does anyone see anything disturbing? Not really, right? But I think that this part is the most disturbing one. That's from real project. That's a project I worked for.
And it's not generated, right?
No, it's not.
It's human-generated.
Human-generated. Super inexpensive human-generated. Well, that's something that needs to be solved. Something that needs to be solved, right? Because it is not cool when your app delegate does so much thing that you have to put things that only app delegate can do on the line 4,870. That's just ridiculous. So in this situation, what I encourage you to do is the super simple categorizing and creating an extensions. With extensions, you can achieve this super clear. You just, well, in this case, it was migration from Objective-C to Swift, but it's a good thing as well. But you can create them in the same language. It's going to be super simple. You just copy and paste method, create an extension, and don't do anything else. No any compilation error, nothing else happens. You're free to go. And then one day, you just realize that it is super simple to go to something like this. You just rename entities, and now you already have structured code. So something related to database is in database handler. Things related to analytics is in analytics screen, manager, and etc. But it just was in app delegate and doing things app delegate wasn't supposed to do. And conclusion in all of this, just to make a point, is calculate the cost of delay. Realize how much your time costs for final stakeholders, and how you can do better from your time if you have a newer technology. If you are able to refactor some functionality which you touch often, make sure you work with this with diagrams, numbers, whatever. Send an email to kick off the conversation just to spin it off, and tell them that that's how much you will save if I finish this refactoring one day. Think about benefits and drawbacks before you start this. It's always better to be prepared to the conversation. Even if you don't put everything on a table right away, you already have things like in your back pockets ready to start when the conversation is going on. Break down the refactoring. Well, as we discussed, it is easier to pick things. It is easier to prioritize them. And everyone is happier, including Scrum Masters and whoever rules your sprints. And yeah, and don't forget to prioritize them, of course. One day it should happen. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, it's just growing your technical backlog. Cover everything with tests. That's super important because really remember, whenever you fail for stakeholders, it's not just technical failure, it's failure in money. So you probably don't really want that. And enjoy refactoring, because that's the coolest thing to do. There is nothing more satisfying than removing old code. So yeah, that's true.